Greetings everyone, welcome to the Sonic Miniseries Issue 1 review. The previous issue, which I've been told coincided with the release of Sonic 2 for the Genesis/Mega Drive, thus tying it into my idea of Sega wanting to promote their mascot, introduced us to this universe, how the conflict between Sonic and the Freedom Fighters and Dr. Robotnik operated, and we even saw how and why Sonic joined the Freedom Fighters before the retconning happened. So, let's get started. Our first story is Run, Sally, Run. Speaking of running, we have Sonic moving through the Great Forest with Tails right behind him. Don't worry, Sonic. No matter how fast you go, Tails will always catch up. Always. They spot Sally on the edge of the Great Forest. You may notice she's now sporting the colorization like the one from the Sat AM episode Heads or Tails. She has no time to chat with Sonic. She has to be somewhere quickly. Puzzled at this behavior, Sonic and Tails head towards the knothole tree stump entrance, only to literally run into Antoine. He shows Sonic a royal proclamation, which explains Sally's behavior. She has arranged a meeting with Robotnik so she can negotiate for the return of her father, King Acorn. Yeah, kinda glossed over that whole Robotnik took her father thing last time. Anyway, the note specifically states that no one is to interfere with the plan. So of course the trio's going to get involved. She's about to negotiate with an obviously cartoony villain. They intercept her while she's talking with a buzz bomber. She explains that the buzz bomber is supposed to take her to a neutral location where the negotiations will take place, and she flies off despite the protests of the others. Before they can do something, a cage springs up, trapping them, and based on its design, I think they can squeeze through the bars. The buzz bomber forces Sally down a smokestack of one of Robotnik's factories where the doctor himself is waiting. How do you like my new contacts, princess? I'm thinking about getting another set, maybe with a more reddish tint. Well, it turns out Robotnik's going back on the deal with Sally. What a surprise. And he's going to turn Sally into a robot. Just before the SWAT-bots toss her into the robot maker, Sonic buzzes in to rescue her. Sonic's buzzing technique is how he, Tails, and Antoine escape the cage. Speaking of Antoine, he gets his moment when he pickpockets Robotnik's blaster. As a final way to ruin Robotnik's day, Sonic destroys the robot-making machine. The Freedom Fighters leave, although Sally's a bit miffed. Perhaps it's because the trio disregarded the royal proclamation saying not to interfere. But it's all gonna work out in the end, right? Sally will admit her mistake and our heroes will forgive her while patting each other on the back. However, the story pulls the rug from under us. See, as Sally reveals to the trio and the readers, getting thrown into the robot maker was the plan. Boomer designed special boots that have camera and computer jamming sensors. The idea was, if they got the inner workings of the robot maker while it was active, they might have came up with an anti-robot device that could have freed the robotic slaves, including Uncle Chuck and Mudski. I'm not including King Acorn in the group because while Sally thinks he's a robot, we'll learn his true fate down the line. This was a need-to-know plan between Sally and Boomer, which I'll discuss more later. And the royal proclamation was to be upheld by everyone. We all know how that turned out. The story ends with Sally storming off, Sonic and Tails apologizing, and Antoine wanting to forget this incident ever happened. We have a one-page story with Sonic playing a game of baseball with Boomer to once again demonstrate how fast the hedgehog is. Next, we get a two-page spread featuring the good, the bad, and the Mudski because he can't be ugly. Look at that face. The second main story, Something Fishy, starts with Sonic fishing. Hey, he's got to put that embarrassing event of the first story behind him. Besides, he has a new problem waiting below. Sonic makes a catch, but it turns out it's a robotic fish. To be specific, the badnik known as Jaws. And it lives up to its name by quickly devouring the dock. Sonic could have moved out of the way here, but no, he just stands there, and as such, he falls into the water. And oh dear, I'm getting Labyrinth Zone flashbacks. Anyway, Sonic follows Jaws straight into a net, which then drags him straight towards an underwater robot maker. Back on the surface, Tails and Boomer find the destroyed pier and Sonic's fishing rod, and assume something bad's happened. So Boomer heads back to headquarters and brings back a bathysphere he's been working on for months. And according to this panel, he pushed it all the way here. Perhaps it's to emphasize how strong Boomer is. But you gotta be careful there, friend. You don't want to injure something like your back. In the water, Sonic frees himself thanks to his spin dash. Unfortunately, he's been in the water too long, and Jaws is about to take advantage of the situation. I think this calls for the appropriate music. Boomer's bathysphere shoots Jaws. Sonic sucks in the torpedo's bubbles for air, and just like in the first story, he destroys the Robot Maker via Spin Dash. Jaws escapes, but it will take him a while to reach Robotnik given his damage. The story ends with the three giving each other a pat on the back, and not having a "you ruined a secret plan" cloud hanging over their heads this time. We have 3 more one-pagers before we end the issue. The first one has Boomer taking the spotlight, talking about some of the slower beings like snails or letters from the mailman. The second has Sonic playing tennis with himself due to, yes, his incredible speed. First baseball, now tennis? What's next? Golf? Finally, we have Sonic looking at a childhood photo album consisting of, well, I think you get the idea. I'm going to focus my efforts on the actual stories and not the one-page gags because they're gags. What else is there to say? I'm also going to start looking at each individual story because while both contain the Sonic destroys a Robot Maker plot point, the elements involved feel different. The first story concentrated more on the Sad AM elements, with Sally going on a secret mission to try to essentially reverse engineer the Robot Maker. The reason it was limited to just Sally and Boomer is that this could cripple Robotnik's operation. Sure, he'll still have his bandits and SWAT bots, but without robotic slaves, things will be more difficult for him in the long run. The less people involved, the less chance that Robotnik might get wind of it somehow, and thus make the necessary countermeasures. Now this need-to-know mission might have some drawbacks. Say Sonic and company did not get involved and Sally was put in the Robot Maker. There might be a chance that those special boots didn't work. I assume the jamming tech was to prevent Sally from getting turned into a robot while the camera does its thing. Or Robotnik spotted the boots prior to Sally being tossed in, and having them analyzed to discover the tech. Either scenario could have resulted in Sally getting turned into a robot, and thus revealing the location of Knothole to Robotnik. Maybe Sonic and company showing up might have been a blessing in disguise. Who's to say? Ultimately, this plot has to fail because it's way too soon to get rid of the turning people into robots shtick, and I'm sure there won't be another plan involving Sally getting tossed into a Robot Maker. No sirree, Bob. The story also has the Freedom Fighters falling into their niche. Sally's the tactician and leader, Boomer's the mechanic and inventor, Antoine's the uptight guard only looking out for the princess's safety, and to be a contrast to Sonic's 90s coolness. Plus there's that whole lack of French accent I failed to mention last time. I read somewhere he wants to be another nationality or something. And finally we have Tails, whom at this point is the tag-along kid. Run Sally Run gets a score of 7. What helped was the surprise ending, and that despite being at odds, Sonic and Antoine are willing to put their grudges aside for the greater good. The second story is more lighthearted and focused more on game elements, specifically those related to Sonic being underwater. The story shows more of Boomer's skills as he shows off the bathysphere. I know this wasn't the original intent, but looking back on this now, I think Boomer helped inspire Tails to become a mechanical genius in his own right, within the context of the comic universe, and you can see it here. I'm giving this story a 5. Pretty average outing, but it does show that Robotnik's menace isn't limited to just dry land. We're halfway through this miniseries, so come back next time as we take a look at issue 2. I just noticed this cybernetic rabbit in the 2-page spread. I'm sure it's no one important.